Hey guys! So, writing. I've been writing since I was about 12, storytelling since earlier, building my storytelling skills until I had an idea that I just had to write down between my 12th and 13th birthdays. It all started with a map, an underground system of passageways inhabited by a group of lycanthropic people. And then I got to thinking, how did these people end up like this? And were there other people around? And how did they interact? And that just completely exploded out into an idea for a novel. The story grew and morphed as I gained a better understanding of the world and wrote other stories and learned from reading other people's stories. When I started university back in 2014, I was able to do a little bit of writing at first, but none at all for the last couple of years. It was probably one of the things that I missed the most during that time, but I never lost track of the ideas and my brain kept on working on them in the background as I studied. Science subjects are notoriously bad at honing a person's skills with the written word, and I found that my skill even to write descriptions and reports had suffered. But like riding a bike, I was able to revisit those skills after my degree and polish off all the rust. All that was left now was to write, but where was I going with this particular character, and how did this other character fit into the overarching story? I had so many ideas, but how did they fit together to form a logical story that was interesting from start to finish? See, it's easy enough to have an idea and know where it starts and finishes, but it's a lot less easy to know what happens in between those 2 points. I've been thinking about the writing process quite a lot recently, and I thought it might be interesting to share some of that. What I say is by no means the be-all end-all of writing, and none of this is hugely in-depth. There are so many different ways of writing, and what matters is that the way that you write is the way that works for you. Also, this is literally writing tips from the Unpublished. Well, unpublished in terms of novels or short stories. I have had a few poems published, and those are in various collections. But poems use quite a different set of skills. There are so many different elements of writing that picking where to start is a whole process in and of itself. There has to be some idea of the plot before the character arcs can be fully fleshed out, and there has to be some idea of the characters themselves to approach how they experience their arcs and the plot. Personally, I enjoy reading stories with characters that are memorable. It's arguably one of the most important aspects of a book, given that most of the plot is driven by the choices and the actions of the characters. Just like in real life, every person would have their own hopes, fears, and dreams for the future. They'd have hobbies, favourite foods, friends, perhaps even things that they're inexplicably stubborn about. It's easy to get carried away with that, and most of it wouldn't come out during the course of the story. However, it's the interesting characteristics that define a person and make them memorable, and it's that carries through to create engaging conversations and interactions between characters. After all, the reader's going to be spending a whole lot of time inside those characters' heads, and that time is most enjoyable if there's chemistry between the characters, and if the thoughts of the characters differentiate themselves from one another. For example, maybe one of the characters is a cheesemaker and compares a lot of things they come across in life to the cheesemaking process. Or maybe something a little bit less tangible, like the character always looks on the bright side of life or has an affinity towards the use of metaphors. On a similar note, when I'm writing antagonists, I like to give them a life beyond bad for bad's sake. Generally, people don't really wake up one day and go, "Hey, I'm going to go off and be bad." So it makes sense that something happened in their past that led to their actions. Maybe in a different universe, the antagonist would have been celebrated for their actions rather than prosecuted. Maybe, given full context, the antagonist's actions were justified in some way. Perhaps through miscommunication gone badly wrong, or through having to make a difficult choice with no right answer. It would also be unlikely that they showed absolutely no compassion as well. I read a really good comic series, which I doubt anyone has really heard of because it was quite niche, and the place that was printing it kind of went out of print halfway through the process. But I digress. In this comic series, the antagonist, an orc, the lead antagonist that is, was really heartless and merciless towards the characters, but then in a scene with his mother he showed his compassionate and unguarded side. But conflict has to come from somewhere, and as a result the characters will usually have beliefs or motives that don't quite align properly. I think some of the beauty of writing is being able to explore the different sides of people and their motivations, figuring out what makes people tick and how that fits into the greater worldview and execution of plot. If every character had the same voice, that would be very unexciting for the reader, And likewise, if all the characters seamlessly cooperated, there would be very little to drive the plot. A lot of writing is about suspension of disbelief, and if the reader can, for a few precious moments, forget that every character originated from the same place and get completely lost in that character as an individual, then that's a job well done. But how to tell if a writing has done that? Well, that takes a lot of practice and intuition and a lot of talking to others once you feel like it might have achieved that. And probably most importantly, quelling that tiny little voice that tells you that it's not good enough and it won't be good enough for a real long time. Because you got this. There are so many other things I could talk about, not just in relation to the characters, but to the plot and the world building and the style used to express the story on the page. But not now. Now it's time to pick up the pen and work towards turning the unpublished into published. That's a dream that grew over a decade ago, and now I have the chance to nurture it. It's an amazing feeling to be able to do that after such a long time. I don't know if writing is your thing or if you're in the right place in your life to pursue it, but don't be disheartened if your dreams seem far off. Whatever your dream, if you do your best to get a little bit closer to it each week, you can get there. Whether that means you have to finish a course first or figure out why on earth you're so tired at the end of each evening and always end up sleeping during your free time, you can do it. Write that book, ace that musical instrument, get out there and chase what makes you happy. Bye.
A little bit magic, a little bit uncontrolled.